Hello everyone, I welcome you to this new live session with H&N International. I'm Juliana Armijo, Key Account Manager for South America. Today, we'll be talking about low pathogenic avian influenza, addressing some topics like a global overview of H9N2 avian influenza virus, egg drop production associated with low pathogenic avian influenza, co-infections and the role in H9N2 related disease complexes, and vaccination strategies. As you can see, this will be a very interesting session. This presentation will be conducted by our external speaker, Denis Yau, veterinarian with over 30 years in poultry health, has worked across China, Europe, Asia, and Africa in technical and leadership roles. Now part of the City University Veterinary Faculty, focusing on poultry production. Due to his busy schedule, Denis will be not able to join us live today to answer your question. If you have any question, please write them in LinkedIn comments, and we will send all answers as soon as possible. Remember, in case of technical problems on LinkedIn, there is a backup broadcast on H&N website, and you can also find this on our YouTube channel. The link will be in the LinkedIn comments. Let's go with Denis' presentation.
Okay, today actually I'm going to present you low pathogenic AI, and I'm not going to give you a talk that like most of the students don't know, because it's not academic. I would like to give you some information that you can use in practice, and there's more on the ground. Before that, I want to introduce a little bit myself. I'm a Hong Kong geese. I'm from Hong Kong, and most of the people ask me, Hong Kong, are you sure? Because we know that Hong Kong do not have that many chicken, and I'm here to present you chicken business. And I have to admit that, yes, after my graduation as a Bachelor of Vet Medicine from National Taiwan University, I went to the Royal Vet College for my master degree in laboratory animal science. And with laboratory animal science, I know that SPF chicken, and SPF chicken is used mostly for experiment. And for this experiment, we know that we need surveillance monitoring to make sure that SPF status, to ensure that they have a good management in production. So those are up to the ceiling standard. And then I joined CP. CP, the first operation in China, located in the southern part, which is very close to Hong Kong. So that's the reason why I went. And I was responsible for the lab doing the surveillance of the breeders, layer breeder, boiler breeders, and piggery. And then 2.5 years after, I joined Intervet. I start with the global, and then China, and then global, with different roles in this company. So technical business unit head, and then I quit because Intervet was acquired by Sharon Proud because of the local. The company is changing, so I decided to be independent. And I worked for MSD, CP, and some breeding company like Avian as a part-time consultant for them. And then I fed up with all the travelings. So I'm reaching the age of retirement. So I say sayonara to the airport and join City University of Hong Kong And I apologize that your agenda mentioned University of Hong Kong. And I'm actually working for CityU as a poultry vet extension service for our 28 native chickens. And that's more my career path for this almost 40 years. So you know, now I'm old enough to stand up here to share you my experience in Asia. Okay, as I promised, I'm not going to give you a long talk that the textbook can tell you. But the point is, I'm not talking about the high pathogenic AI, which is more on the H5 or H7. But even with H5 or H7, it can also be in the category of low pathogenic AI. With the low pathogenic AI, if you go to the OIE standard, you always said, well, it's no pathogenicity. So when they put on the SPF chicken challenge, you don't see deaths. You don't see the IVPI more than 1.2. And they see it as non-pathogenic or low pathogenic. But in Asia, we see something different. We can identify, say, H9N2, we put it into the lab, and they are low pathogenic or no pathogenic AI, but on the field, it is quite different. We see drop in production, more respiratory problems, more mortality. And that is the situation that we have in Asia Pacific. This is from another company, laying companies. You see here, with the infection, you see drop in production and increase a little bit on the cumulative mortality after the infection. But it is not high pathogenic AI. So I want to come to you again and say, before you say this is low pathogenic AI or ND, for instance, because across the globe now, the researchers are more interested in genetics. You can have more genotype issues. So genotype 7 ND is what you now normally heard. But whether genotype 7 is the only pathogens in your farm, that's a big question mark. So before that, I really want to suggest you, when you experience some abnormal drop in production, and you have a regular ND vaccination, you have regular IB vaccination, or others, most common pathogens in your country, but you still see these problems, and then before you come up with a genotype 7 ND, for instance, please also help me and help yourself to check with whether it is a low pathogenic existing. I'm not going to give you all details, but I assume that our H&N colleagues will share you with this. I hope it is not PowerPoint, but a PDF. So later on, you might receive this, and it is not copyright. So in Asia, I just want to remind you, almost of the problems that you've seen, you need to differentiate with all this, because these are all the most common disease that I experience across the region. You might say, no, I don't have it, but make sure that when you say no, don't fool yourself, don't fool your chicken, and don't fool the others, because they are there. So my intervention on having this problem seen on your farm, please try to do the surveillance. You need to check all that you commonly do, but also the low pathogenic AI. So you can do serology, you can do PCR. And as I mentioned, that low pathogenic AI can be H5, H7, but the most common one is H9N2. If you look Google, you can find lots of papers sharing their insight about the H9N2. And with this H9N2, they mentioned that it causes mortality, even though H9N2 seen as low pathogenic or low pathogenic. In India, there's also one paper sharing this geographic of the H9N2. Here I want to mention, this is most commonly that why I pick up H9N2 is because it contributes towards the genesis of zoonotic AI virus. So when you find H5 or H7 N something with the clade 2.32, 2.31, or 1.4, most of those isolates share the part of the genes from the H9N2. So this is something very common. And if you look at in other papers, you see here, this is the global situations. With all the color here, you see how it spread. I didn't find any papers showing that Manila or the Philippines has it. But I have to remind you, a few years back, when I was traveling here in Manila or in the Philippines, I went to the farm and asked one of the chief veterinarians about the presence of ND or AI, and he said, no, we did not have it. But now, the latest version was, before I quit from vaccine company, I know that there's ND. And then very recently, H5. And I hope you still keep the H9N2 free. So H9N2, as I mentioned, if you put it back to the lab, reference lab, they all say is low pathogenic or no pathogenic. But the point is, on the farms, people are crying to see drop in production and mortality. So how to link the academic findings with the local practical findings? There is an issue of you guys. We bring it back. This is the presentation that we have from the old internet era. We try to find whether the low pathogenic in AI with either respiratory disease like IB or ND, or some immunosuppressive disease like Rio, or the most common one nowadays in India, for instance, we have the hypopericardium, perihepatitis, adenovirus, or adenotype 4. So let's have a look on any of them co-infect with H9N2, a low or no pathogenic AI. We see here the adenovirus type 4. on the mortality. So again, when you do only avian influenza challenge, you don't see any mortality. With the adeno, you see up to 50-something% mortality. But when you challenge the chicken with both H9N2 and the adenovirus type 4, you see a surge mortality in around up to something 80%. And the ERS, the same, because normally Rio is not killing the chickens. So before setting this trial or experiment, we do vaccinations on the Rio 2177 at day 0, and then at 3 weeks of age, we challenge H9 with 3 different routes. So it's not just one route. And then there is aerosol, intranasal, and intravenous. We see some mortality. But with the Rio, because of vaccinations, we don't see any mortality. When you add this Rio on top of H9N2, you see 80% mortality. And then with the classical IB, Massachusetts, you see here also mortality comes up when H9N2 plus M41, you see a slightly increase in mortality. But the worst thing is you see very severe encephalitis and tracheitis, whereas avian influenza alone do not cause any problems. And then we look at the ND. The ND here, we use this mutant strain, which is more like a mesogenic type. It's not a velogenic type. And in India, for instance, or even in China, some of the farmers are still using a mesogenic live vaccine, which in India we call Musteswa. This kind of things, and this is very similar. So you see here, the H9N2 alone will not cause any problems. With this mesogenic type live is giving depressed. The birds are not active, but we don't see any tracheitis or mortality. But when this mesogenic type ND plus H9N2, you see very high mortality, up to 60%. And in this case, you don't need genotype 7. It's only a mesogenic type plus a low pathogenic AI can do the work already. So, like what I said, we need a very thorough monitoring. Don't just jump quickly into a conclusion when you identify one single pathogen. And in the field, it is not that easy. It is not like the experimental units where you have SPF, you have every negative or positive pressure control isolators. Here, it is in Asia, and it's particularly in layers. Last month, I was in Indonesia visiting layer farms. This layer farm was run by a Chinese owner. It has 200 farms and with 200 different ages. So biosecurity is one of the big issues in these operations. So my conclusion for those slides that I just present, low pathogenic AI can cause disease or enhance the disease of chickens by FAV, Rio, IBV, or traditional antivirus. Then the question is, do we need to vaccinate H&N2? I don't know. I know that some of you are from Thailand. Anyone from Thailand? Thai? Sawadee krap. And Philippines? Major Philippines. So in Thailand, I know some of the layer farms, they do use H9N2, even though government do not allow. ครับ ใช่ ไม่มีปัญหา But I know that some smuggle vaccine from mainland China. Sorry for that. No videotape. And then from the Philippines, I know that the Philippine government is very strict. So I only hear something run out from the country, but not too many coming into the country. So I don't know that much about the H9N2 use, but in Indonesia, anyone from Indonesia? No. And definitely in India, they do H9N2 vaccination. Pakistan, yeah, sorry, Pakistan, I've been there. Yes, they do. So, are you happy with a conclusion like, okay, when you have H9N2, do vaccination, everything solved? Then my talk finished now. I will show you again a trial, which means we do SPF chickens, vaccinate H9N2, and then, or at that same time, we do clone 30 Lasota strain, or C2, a mild strain, to mimic that the mild strain is not giving a better protection, or a Lasota strain is giving the best protection of ND. And this is and then after that we do challenge. Day old we do vaccination, both H9N2 and live ND. And then 5 weeks after we do the challenge, and we observe for 2 weeks. The challenge virus is the hot velogenic strain, mild mesogenic strain, and H9N2. So with this one, we do vaccination of the H9N2, and this one we do a clone 30. Challenge, we don't see any problems. With this ND challenge, we don't see any problems. With this ND and H9N2 challenge, we don't see any problems. So after this, what is your interpretation? Vaccine. This one without H9N2, this one with H9N2. We don't see any problem. We don't see any difference. So the conclusion is, no need to vaccination. Can we jump to this conclusion this fast? Then we look at this one. This one, we do a mild C2. And then we challenge only the message, the velogenic strain. We don't see any problem here. With this one, with a combined challenge, we see problems. Sorry. Better? Sorry. So with this one, we see here the ND challenge only with only ND vaccine and then both ND and H9 vaccination, they do not have any problems. But the point is, when there's a H9N2 challenge, we see both do not get a good protection. So that means your ND vaccination was not done properly. Because when you compare to the last one, if you have a good ND vaccination properly, you don't see any problem. Okay, now I have another issue here. Now we're using the mesogenic type as a challenge, but mild C2 as ND is not protected properly when in face of a virogenic strain presence. You see here, no problems with single ND or ND plus H9N2 challenge. Here we don't see anything, but here we see if you do not do a H9N2 vaccination, then you have problems. So sorry for the Pakistani, if you say the H9N2 vaccination help, that means your ND is not done properly. Agree with that? So after all this, I would say no. I don't see there's a point for there's no point for H9N2 vaccination if and only if your other diseases are protected properly. So please, before you go decide that you need to do the H9N2 vaccination, you have to ensure yourself the other diseases are protected well enough. And I have to tell you that it's not just the vaccine, it's also the biosecurity. Fernando will follow with that, so I'm not going to touch that too much. And the last one is a proper management. As I mentioned, most of the layer farms in Asia, they are very complicated with different ages because they want to keep egg supply every day. So they have non-stop production. So you can imagine every day in the year, eggs are delivered to the farm, to the market. And that means on the farms, you have more age. And for the biosecurity, multi-age is a worse biosecurity. And I'm not saying that we can't do anything, but you have to bear in mind this is something shortcoming. So you have to think about that. Okay, no vaccination, and yes, but there's another issue here. H9N2, as I mentioned, no pathogenic. IPVI is 0, but in the field, we see problems, especially different isolate from different part of the world, they have different pathogenicity. And this is something like the isolate from Beijing in year 1994. So we need to work out some sort of challenge. H9N2 actually affects the respiratory tract. And with the inoculation of H9N2 field virus, it can cause respiratory problems. And I'm sorry to say that maybe you layer guys will say, no, we are more concerned about the egg production drop. Sorry for this, because we do not have that much time for the model, and then the layer is more expensive. So normally we do boiler. And then we look at the respiratory lesions, and with the respiratory lesions, you can apply also to the layer that birds are feeling sick, they don't eat that much, then you have drop in production. So there is a chain reactions. And then this is the findings, the H9N2 after inoculation through the respiratory tract. You see red, you see some exudates, you see blockage of the airway, so birds are dying because of cannot breathe. You see in histopathology that proof there's something inside the lumen of the trachea, so that block the air to come in and out. You hear rails coughing, bronchitis, and pneumonia. So H9N2 from different part of the world, some isolate can on itself cause problems. And then we look at, as in the lab, we'll always look at the cilia movement. So cilia movement, I don't want to spend too much time. Maybe Pratap should have told you already what is the cilia activity. So we do a trachea with upper, middle, and lower part and cross sections. And then under the microscope, you see the cilia movement. If they are moving 100%, there is 100% cilia movement. If not, then they have less. The less movement means they have damage. They are more susceptible to secondary infections. And this could be moving, but sorry, I don't want to share you this one. So with the H9N2 and compare with only allantoid fluid, we see after the challenge 3 days and 6 days, with this H9N2, you don't see any cilia movement. That's very severe. But 2 weeks after, you see they are recovered. But within these days, you hear noises, you might experience also drop in production. With the isolate from 4 different countries, you see here Saudi Arabia, China, Pakistan, and Iran. Here you see the isolate from Iran has the highest pathogenicity in terms of cilia activity damage. And you also see the Iran isolate has higher mortality rate on its own. So with this one, we decided to do the vaccine and then challenge that with the isolate 3 weeks after the vaccination. The vaccine is done day 0, and then we look at the cilia activity and the clinical signs. You see here, we use the Arab isolate by spray, and you see vaccinated group, they are well protected, but for the control, no vaccination, you see very poor cilia activity. With the mortality, you see also vaccinated group do not get any mortality, but for the non-vaccinated group, you see 21 out of 25 birds are dead. So summary, in case you have reviewed all of your common disease protections or prevention measures, there's no other improvement, and we still see problem and identify it was H9N2, then you need to consider the H9N2 vaccination. So it is, don't easily come in to a conclusion, okay, I do the vaccination and sit back, relax, everything's fine. That is not the case. Okay, so our low pathogenic AI, especially what I use this H9N2 as a reference, can enhance or cause disease in chicken infected with other viruses. And protection can be achieved by efficient vaccination of the other concurrent virus infections. So don't jump too fast on the H9N2 vaccination in case you do not have the supply in your, regulations that you're not allowed to, you don't have the commercialized vaccine. Please go to look at the concurrent virus such as ND, IB, for instance. So I just want to brief you a little bit with the ND. Most of the time when there's a noise saying that genotype 7, and then they jump into repeating the genotype 7 Q vaccines several times. I have to remind you that for the ND, we always need to consider also life for the local immunity, Q for the inactivate, for the humoral immunity. So live and inactivated vaccine is needed. And then for the IB, because of the variants, so you should consider a protectotype approach. That means with your Massachusetts plus a variant. And then for the ILT, I know that in the Philippines, the ILT is not a routine vaccination, but for the ILT, most problem is they always cause problems after vaccination. So you might have reactions. Those who are using the chicken embryo origin vaccines might also, in some day, after several rounds, the vaccine itself can heat up, and they're more like the field strain that could cause also problems. So maybe it's a good time to consider whether we should use the vector, the recombinant HVT vector vaccine for the ILT. Then I want to also share you that avian metapneumovirus. I start with my CTU route in 2019, and I start with all the monitoring. I found in Hong Kong, the pneumovirus or MPV is quite prevalent. And I believe if you have done the monitoring in your country or on your farms, the APV should be also very popular. And most of the time, we don't see AMPV a problem. And I admit that it is not a problem. But having said that, the H9N2 plus, the AMPV could cause the problems that you have in the farm. So please try also rule it out, but you have to do the monitoring. And for the MGMS, in Hong Kong, we did also monitoring at a late stage. We have the native chicken, so the chickens up to 90 days go to the market. And I always take samples 2 weeks before they go to the market, and most of them are all positive to MG or MS. So MS, MG is a problem, and you should consider biosecurity and spray live vaccines in your production herd. The coryza, we need A, B, C trivalent. Don't go to only A or C or AC with double C types. It should be A, B, C. And then IBD, we know that in layer farms, most of the time, maybe back to 20-something years, they had IBD problems. And then now you hardly hear them saying IBD, because what they do is they do use a very hot strain. And that hot strain actually burned the bursa. When the bursa was once burned, you will not get IBD. But when the bursa was burned too early or too young, that means those flocks will be under immunosuppression. And then you have more H9N2 problems. So with the IBD, the golden rule is go for the PS or breeders, do as much as possible to raise the maternal antibody up as uniform and high, so the progeny will be much easier to get only once live, or with the vector in the hatchery. And bear in mind, the vector takes 2 to 3 weeks to build up the immunity of IBD. So you still need the high maternal antibody. And then chicken anemia virus, which I don't know whether this is very common use in the breeders, but believe me that CAV need to be a breeder vaccination like AE, avian encephalitis. You have to do, as a responsible breeders, 1 vaccination before production, and that's it. For the Rio, maybe layers are not that popular in doing the Rio vaccination, because from my understanding when I was still a student, we know that Rio is a problem for the heavy bird. For layer, it's never heavier than a broiler. So most of the time, layer might not do any Rio vaccination. But I have to say that Rio is a virus, and it will not recognize, say, oh, this is a broiler, so I want to attack you. Oh, this is a layer. No, this is not my type. No, they will go. They will go also, in fact, with a lightweight bird, but they don't have a more severe clinical picture as a broiler. So the Rio still can be, Rio can still infect layer. That will not cause the leg issue or arthritis, but it can cause immunosuppression. So again, Rio, our suggestion is do breeder vaccination. Okay, so prevention of the disease. I want to make a conclusion here. I leave this part to Fernando, and I hope you guys with this part, you need to improve. We need a good record keeping to remind us to look for an early warning that we can act before our action is too late. Without the record keeping, any experts outside your operation or inside the operation cannot do anything, because record keeping with a proper analysis can give us a lot of information. And this is just to help Fernando. I hope you touch all this. But biosecurity, what I want to say is the key issues. And then these are the bring home message. So please management, the ventilation, stocking density, a balanced feed, and you need to do the monitoring with the support of your own veterinarians or breeding company or vaccine company. Prevention of other common disease like ND, IB, APV, MG, or MS. Prevention of the immunosuppressive disease like IBD, CAV, and RIO. Biosecurity again. I know that most of the people say I do disinfections, but most of the time, without the cleaning, disinfections alone cannot do the job. And then last but not the least is the vaccine. We all agree that we are in Asia. We have a higher temperature, even though the global warming make Europe or American know that the summer can be very hot. But we are here every day, summer day. So hot, the vaccine storage, cold chain, the application. I noticed that most of the problem that we see in the field is the vaccine was not applied properly. So, and I know that, and I agree that vaccination is very boring. So people on the farm, they try to compete and doing the bet, who will do the faster one? So I can do 1 hour with 2,000 chickens, or 1 hour with 5,000 chicken, then you get the bet. No, and that is the fun for them, but that is worse. That is a disaster for our vaccine. And then you need also to review your vaccination program. Either they are too intensive, or the interval are too short, that the interference of different vaccines are interfering each other. So that's the reason why I mentioned that ND might not have a good result or vaccination. Okay, these are the reference, and thank you for listening. Thank you so much.
We want to thank Denis for his presentation and for sharing his knowledge and experience. We also want to thank all of you for your time. We will come back with another live session in November with the participation of Roselina Angel to talk about nutrition. Stay tuned. Have a great day.